All right, man, listen up. This coming Wednesday night, the 30th of October, if you're listening to this podcast within a few days of its release, is when this month's all-important masterclass for men is going to go down. This month, by popular request, we're going to talk about the masculine mindset, how to think like a man and win. Listen, gentlemen, we were born to win. We were born to provide and to protect. But nowadays, too many of us are allowing ourselves to feel beaten down. A lot of us are watching television, listening to the media, not knowing what to believe, what's expected of us as men anymore. Well, this coming Wednesday night is a night of clarity for every man out there who wants to think like a man, win like a man, get that mindset absolutely tuned up so we can go out there and not only crush it in our hopes and dreams, but also get that attraction we want from women and gain the respect and admiration from our fellow men. Gentlemen, it's dead simple. Your mindset has got to be in order first. Then and only then can you expect the actions to follow that bring results and success. That means this month's masterclass for men is all important. Masculine mindset. Think like a man and win. This coming Wednesday night, 30th of October, 2024 at 8 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Get your tickets now at mountaintoppodcast.com/masterclass. That's mountaintoppodcast.com/masterclass. Gentlemen, it's time to get rid of the stinking thinking, clean house, and win.
Live from the mist-enshrouded mountaintop fortress that is X and Y Communications headquarters, you're listening to the world-famous Mountaintop Podcast. And now, here's your host, Scott McKay.
All right, how's it going, everybody? Welcome to another episode of The Big Show. My name is Scott McKay.
And I'm Emily McKay.
And we have a barn burner of a topic today, Emily. It's, should we even get into a relationship? I mean, not just you and I, or whoever may be asking the question, but in general, why get into a relationship with someone at all anymore in the year 2024 going into 2025?
Well, that's a great question, because in today's society, it's starting to get to the point where we're thinking that, well, maybe I'll just stay single, stay settled in my own ways. No one tells me what to do, and I can do as I please. So why should I get into a relationship?
That all sounds pretty good on the surface. I mean, I don't want anybody telling me what to do, how to spend my money. I don't want to be saddled down paying someone else's bills, especially some chick who's going to demand and be greedy. And this is all going to end up seeming really transactional anyway. I mean, the last thing I need is another mouth to feed just for the sake of saying I'm in a relationship.
So let's talk about this.
Well, I mean, that's a cynical way of thinking, obviously, that I presented. And clearly, I love you very much, and we have a wonderful relationship. So I know everybody listening to the sound of our voice already knows where we're headed with this, that we're going to be all for being in a relationship with someone who you belong in a relationship with. But I do want to lend some credibility to the argument that, hey, you know what? Nowadays, maybe I don't need this. If I'm someone else.
Or why should I?
Why should I? I mean, okay, let's say I'm a guy, and indeed, I fear a gold digger. I fear she's going to just take. I've met so many narcissistic people. Heck, maybe I'm even a narcissist, whether I want to admit it or not, and I just don't feel like sharing.
Well, from the woman's perspective, it's the same thing. Why would I want to get in a relationship with a guy who's going to tell me what to do and bully me around and feel like I've, gone back several decades or several centuries?
Yeah, I mean, more than ever, you have entire echo chambers of cynical people, both men and women, gay and straight.
Yes, it's not specific.
No, you have men going their own way and the red-pilled guys, and you have fourth-wave feminists who think they need a man as much as a fish needs a bicycle.
That's
right?
A pretty dark thinking.
Well, not if you really believe in it and you think you're doing the right thing. I mean, I could get an AI girlfriend. I can watch HD porn. I mean, I can even get my rocks off sexually without having a real woman in the way.
Well, I'll have to give you my opinion here. It really seems sad to feel this way. It's almost as if instead of believing it, it's almost like we're trying to justify feeling like we're never going to accomplish really what we want at our core.
Well, that would be sad. If, for example, I really did believe in the power of a relationship. I really did want a woman in my life, but I've simply given up because I've gone through too long of a losing streak or a dry spell. And I'm just thinking to myself, it's time to buck up, little buckaroo, and just realize this isn't going to happen for you. So move on to something else. Spend all your money on your own thing, drown yourself in porn, et cetera, et cetera.
I mean, hey, that makes a great substitute, right?
Well, if it legitimately does seem like a great substitute to you, I don't know if this is going to surprise you or not, but more power to someone who thinks like that. If that's what they really want, I've already found out, as you have lately, it's hard to talk people who feel very strongly about that out of that way of thinking. You can say to them, hey, you know what? There's more. There's something bigger. You have no idea what you're even missing out on being in a relationship with a real, live, red-blooded human being. But if it falls on deaf ears, then so what?
The way I see that, every time we talk to somebody like that, they always believe it's the other party. They're selfish. They're narcissistic. They're this, they're that. It's their problem. But the thing is, when we stop to look at it, it's not gender specific. What we've found is both male and females are suffering from the same problem. And if we stop and look and realize that there's other people who are just like us, good-hearted, genuinely great people who want to love and care and be generous and give nothing but love to each other, there's someone else out there of the opposite gender who's that way too. They're not just all bad people.
Meanwhile, a bunch of people, again, are listening to the sound of our voice saying, oh, please, as if you don't think I've tried that already. I'm 40 years old, and I've spent the last 28 of those 40 years trying to find someone exactly like that, and they just don't exist.
So what's the cure?
Well, first of all, let me throw a curveball at what you just said. All right? You can hit it out of the park if you want, but it's a curveball.
All right.
And I would argue we have met people who are perfectly content to admit out loud, yeah, you know what? I suck. I'm a selfish person. I have no desire to father children because I think they just are a pain in the ass and they're a drain on my resources. I would like to be alone. I would like to stay selfish. I don't need anybody. And the rest of y'all just go away. And, you know, if you think you're talking quote unquote sense into someone who believes like that, guess again, because that's what they really think. And they have a right not to think like I do.
Right. And, you know, the good thing is at least they're honest about it and are able to live that way. That's perfectly fine for them.
Bingo. And I would argue it's easier to be that person nowadays, even and perhaps especially if you're a woman, because you really can get a job. You really can work from home. You really don't need someone to provide and protect from all the warring tribes and saber-toothed tigers out there in this postmodern world. You can get by on your own. Kids are a pain in the ass, and if you don't want them, I have clear visibility into exactly why you'd feel that way. Now, you and I have 4 children. We love them. They love us.
More than made up for that.
Yeah, and it's incredibly rewarding to be a parent for us. But if it's not going to be that way for you, a part of me just wants to thank you for not bringing any children into this godforsaken world, if that's you.
That's right. That would make you miserable and everybody else.
Yeah, so let's hear it for informed non-parenthood instead of, hey, let's just pop out babies, even though we don't want to be parents, we don't know how to be parents, and we have no desire in changing any of the above.
Right, and then we end up with children who grow up being entitled or having issues of their own.
Well, entitled is one thing. Feeling unloved and, you know, being people pleasers, or God forbid, they're fetal alcohol syndrome children because we didn't even care about them when we were pregnant. Hey, guess what? Thank you for not having any children, if that was going to be you as a parent.
That's right. So being honest with ourselves and what we really want and what will make us happy versus making us miserable, that's important to be honest about.
And here's another thing while we're on a similar subject. If you are the kind of person who really just doesn't have any use for someone of the other gender, you don't like them, you think it's all their faults, you're frustrated, you're bitter, or you just don't have any interest, or you don't want to give anything to a relationship, but yes, you're horny, thank you again for drowning in porn. That was the easy way out. I mean, you can argue from a meta-level perspective that pornography hurts women, hurts people in general, but in the here and now, you sitting behind your computer jerking off doesn't hurt a real woman who you would theoretically be in a relationship with. It's a lot more innocuous than ruining a real human being's life by pretending you wanted to be in a relationship with them for any other reason than simply getting your rocks off and using them as a masturbation tool.
So let's talk about the positives of why being in a relationship has its benefits.
Okay, let's go ahead and shift gears and instead of sounding so cynical, talk about the counterpoint.
Right.
I'm with you on that. I mean, I think everybody can tell this is kayfabe. We're playing up, don't get me wrong, out of a sincere regard for putting it on the table and considering that counterpoint. But yeah, at this point, maybe we do owe people a realistic reason why relationships still matter in this day and age.
Right. Plus, we want to bring it out that a lot of us have thought these thoughts. I mean, you would be human not to sometimes with all that goes on in life and the ups and the disappointments that go on with relationships. So a lot of people have thought at least one or two of these ideas that we presented. And so we want to talk about why we should stay in it if you really want a relationship and not give up.
Well, there's two different topics on the table here. Why get into a relationship as opposed to why stay in a relationship if that relationship doesn't seem to be going well. So we have two different angles to approach this from. Why get into a relationship? Well, I like being married to my best friend. I do like parenting children and having us all be under one roof. I like sharing experiences with you. And I strongly believe there's a higher, more detailed level to male-female relationship than simply just having sex.
Yes, actually, I feel the same about that too. And to add to that, I love going through life with you and the ups and the downs and whatever challenges that come our way that we have no control over, but we're fighting those things together as a team, not by ourselves and feeling lonely and maybe feeling like, what if it doesn't work? But I have you to support me and cheer me on to keep moving forward.
Well, that's a great point. No matter what happens, life is not always going to be a bed of roses. There are going to be challenges that get thrown your way. And I agree with you 1,000%, Emily. I'd much rather have someone to share those challenges with rather than going it alone.
And if it's that challenge is just for me only, you're there to push me forward and make me stronger. Or if that challenge is directed at you and you're having a hard time with something, that's my job to strengthen you. And that makes me feel good because I'm there to do something that makes my life meaningful.
Yeah, the whole idea of purpose is underrated nowadays. Yet most people, I would say, get up and they think to themselves, why am I alive? How should my life matter? How can my life matter more? Purpose is baked into our souls as human beings. And, a purpose can be as simple as being a wife, a husband, a mother, a father, even a sister or a brother, or even a friend for sure. But I would guess, and I have nothing to back this on other than instinct, that people who are in relationships, people who are parents, can very easily point to those relationships as a central part of their purpose. I mean, even billionaires, captains of industry, famous people will often put husband, wife, father, mother at the top of their resume, even if it's just lip service on Facebook. But for sure, we all instinctively understand as fathers, mothers, parents, if we are fitting of that description, that there should be some significance and purpose to being that person for someone else.
And not to sound dark, but even at the end of life, we reach 80 years old and we finally come to the end of our journey. We'd like for someone to care that we even were here to begin with. Someone to be at our funeral and say, yes, this person was great and they mattered to us.
And to go along with that, you look back on your life and you don't say to yourself, well, I had a bunch of cars and I have a bunch of money in the bank. It's all about the people who impacted you, the people you impacted, hopefully in a positive way, and the people you're in relationship with. This is what really matters. And no matter how much we focus on the trivialities of life, whatever drama's going on, whatever the money issue is, it seems like when there's a crisis of human proportions, everybody drops the politics, everybody drops the petty stuff, and we all pitch in and we help each other as humans. We stop thinking about who you voted for, which God you pray to, etc., and we all get a whole lot more human with each other very quickly, which in and of itself speaks volumes to the broader subject of relationships.
That's what empowers us. That's what makes us keep moving forward and gives us meaning and purpose, and why we have that drive or instinct or desire to be with somebody. to be complete or whole. Not that we're not whole as a separate entity or by ourselves, but that it fulfills us even more so. It's like the cup overfills with flowing waters of joy.
Well, for sure. Now, if someone's listening to this podcast and rolling their eyes, again, more power to them. I don't think what we're talking about is everybody's cup of tea. And I think there's legitimacy to people who just don't feel like they need people or need relationships. That's who they are. And it's not for us to try to change their minds. Now, on to that other side of what you were talking about, which is, okay, we're in a relationship and we want out. Should we stay? Should we leave?
That's a really very deep question, because we have to look at all the things that surround that. Do we have children? How far are we into it? How is our finances? How serious is the differences of our relationship? Can it be mended? Do we want to mend it? Why is it broken?
How did we get here?
Exactly.
Right. This is not my beautiful house. This is not my beautiful wife, like the Talking Heads song.
But at some point, you loved each other enough to get together and get married, or at least be in a relationship as a team together. So what broke, and can it be fixed?
Well, sometimes people lie to each other to get into that relationship. Sometimes people change.
Yeah.
Sometimes people go nuts.
That happens.
Yeah. Life is not a static state of affairs.
There's no guarantees in life.
That's right. Here's my question. It seems like whenever something bad happens, nowadays people, especially if they're really goal-driven type A people, refuse to give themselves permission to feel bad about it, to mourn the loss of something, to really allow themselves to feel anger. It's more like, okay, bottle all that up, stuff it all down, and go back and just act like you still love this person, or you never were angry, or that they didn't hurt you. Now, obviously, if someone is manipulative, narcissistic, they can use the other person's tendency to respond like that in a quote-unquote crisis situation or a negative situation to their advantage, because obviously it's not negative or a crisis situation to them. They're getting what they want at the other person's expense. But I'm going to go on record right here and right now in this show saying, if something bad happens, if you get into an argument, if your family's going through a crisis, I think it's okay to sit with that anger, to sit with that sadness, to let it loose. And I think when couples trust each other, they can give each other room to vent, or they can even give each other room to argue and get their rocks off that way because, well, for lack of a better way to put it, they trust each other in that context.
Yes, and I'd like to add one more thought to that. As long as that's done in a controlled way. In other words, we're not going to throw names out there and throw the D word, the D word, the divorce word.
Yeah.
And that we're not going to treat the relationship cheaply when we're in that situation. We are looking to express ourselves and say how we're feeling so that we can support one another, not so we can destroy the relationship.
I think that's a brilliant point. I mean, to clarify what you were just alluding to, if every time you get into a minor spat, the two of you throw a tantrum and say, well, I want a divorce.
Or I hate you, or you're just awful. I wish you were dead.
Or yeah, say something that any normal red-blooded human being wouldn't really mean if they were in a meaningful relationship with someone, or arguably even worse, something you're going to regret later because you didn't have the emotional maturity, aka self-control, to rein yourself in and bite your tongue.
Right.
Now, in our relationship, I can't remember a time I really wanted to say something to you hurtful and had to bite my tongue, because I actually like you.
Right.
And I love you. And I don't want to say anything hurtful, and I don't have any really negative, terrible thoughts. But if you piss me off, or if I'm irked, or if I'm hangry, I think, just to let me
vent,
blow off some steam.
Yeah.
And you could do the same if you've had a rough day, or if the kids have pushed you just a little too far, right?
Oh,
That's
yes.
different.
That's voicing what you're feeling, what you're thinking, what you need done. Things that need to be taken care of, accomplished, so that you don't feel like you're getting stomped on day after day after day till you finally can't take it. And the whole thing blows up, and the relationship, both with your significant other along with the children, are destroyed. So these are things you have to take care of as they're going on. If you have to express your feelings and your thoughts, this is where communication is important.
Now, here's something that I'm going to add to what we're talking about that may feel a little unexpected, even to you.
All right.
I would not say that those instances whereby you're angry with each other, venting at each other, not particularly happy, one of you has pissed each other off, would point to a good solid reason to avoid getting into a relationship to begin with. Someone's out there, Emily, listening to this and going, my goodness, if it's all just about arguing and venting, which it isn't all about, right? But if there are indeed frequent arguments and you're venting, why bother? Just stay out of a stupid relationship like that. But see, I think we as humans need those moments. We need somebody to vent to. We need somebody who is trustworthy in that context, and vice versa, so we can be a sounding board to each other. Because arguably the one thing worse than bottling it all inside until you become a serial killer or something is you'd really like to vent. You'd really like to share this with someone, but there is nobody to share it with. Hence, you bottle it up and become a serial killer or something.
Or find yourself a therapist and just sit on the couch for the rest of the, few decades.
Which somebody out there is saying, yeah, that's still a lot less expensive than marriage. Ha, gotcha. Checkmate, right?
Yeah, it's just not the same.
It's not the same. No, because it's not a two-way street.
No, it's just someone sitting there listening who doesn't have your best interest at heart. When I say that, it's not just simply about collecting a fee every single time. You. But we're talking about someone who would. Exactly. Someone who has more invested in it.
And they can't be that vulnerable with you either. It's got to be one-sided or else it's not professional.
Right. So it lacks a lot in that respect.
Yeah, I mean, as coaches, we can be a little more vulnerable with people and share our experiences, as we're doing right now, frankly. But still, there is no substitute for someone who you have deep intimacy with, to the point where you are free to be exactly who you are, anger, bitterness, bad day, hangriness and all, and still
they love you for it.
They love you for it,
and
you're still good to each other.
And say, hey, I know you're feeling this way, but you have some great strengths. Here's where you excel. Here's how you can move forward. Here's how you can deal with your coworkers. Here's how you can deal with your girlfriends. They're great sounding boards to help make you stronger.
Or maybe they can just listen without trying to fix it.
Oh, yeah, that's true. That's one thing we always claim as women is that guys are always trying to fix things. We just want someone to listen.
Yeah, but think of it. Someone you trust this much because you love them this much. And they're there for you the same way you are for them. Now, again, what I'm advocating here is not crapping all over each other and treating each other poorly. I'm talking about transparency. Transparency born of intimacy. I know you. I trust you. I like you enough that I'm okay with you seeing me at my worst. And I'm okay with seeing you at your worst. It's like the psychosocial equivalent of waking up with someone the next morning when they have bad breath and no makeup. You still love them.
Unlike the early 1900s when women wake up in the morning before their husbands did and got dressed and pretty because they weren't allowed to see you at your worst.
And by the way, you guys should see me without my makeup. It really is scary. I'm joking. Obviously. I should probably cut that out.
Nah.
I'll leave it in there. Someone laughed.
Right.
We needed a little bit of levity in this particular topic, didn't we?
We did. Well, it's such a deep conversation because it matters to a lot of people. A lot of us want to be in a relationship and we want to be happy. And not to sound Pollyannish, but that's a natural human desire. And a lot of times we're in a relationship and it may not feel perfect. And we have to think, well, is it because life is difficult? For example, finances, or it could be a death in the family has disrupted the balance of things. Do we just hit the eject button? Do we call it quits and say, something's going to be easier, more fun somewhere else, either by myself or maybe with a different entity?
Well, again, as cynical as this may sound, I would think if that was one's tendency, the relationship wouldn't have lasted that long anyway enough to get married. You would have hit the eject button as soon as it got a little hot under the collar.
Well, some people stick it out long enough before they do hit that eject button. But, are we ready to hit that eject button or are we willing to stick it through? Now, that's different when you were talking about earlier about being with a narcissist who's baiting us and all that. That's when we have to find the eject button. And for some people, that's hard to do.
Well, another thing that deserves to be talked about here is what if I get into a relationship with someone out of desperation or out of convenience, or it is some kind of arrangement?
Or this is better than nothing at all.
Right. And we don't even bother with intimacy because that's too scary, because that might shine the light on a deal breaker or two, and we can't abide that.
Or I find this great relationship. It's going well. It's going wonderful. But, the fear of them leaving is just horrifying, that it's just too stressful. I'd rather not deal with it.
Exactly. And what happens in those situations, in case it wasn't obvious enough, is those couples, I'm not even sure they have insights into the kind of intimacy we're talking about here, let alone want and desire something at that level. They're fearing any kind of discord, any kind of disagreement, any kind of dust up between them, because their relationship isn't strong enough at its core to take it. That really could break them up permanently. So this level of being relaxed enough to be vulnerable enough, to be authentic enough. How's that for a bunch of buzzwords, 3 in a row? All nicely arranged. To be able to trust each other with that. I mean, we're talking about a level of love that most couples don't even really consider. And Emily, it comes back to the very definition of true love itself. If you consider that human emotion really comes down to love or fear, I've got to stop being afraid of you. I've got to stop being afraid of interacting with you. I've got to stop being afraid of being honest with you. I've got to stop being afraid of being at my worst with you.
Right. Because
so I can love you that way.
Yeah. Because if we're fearful that if the other person finds out how we really think about things, what we really want in life, that maybe they'll leave us. That's a very scary, stressful situation to be in.
Yeah. I mean, that is the larger, more macro scope of what we're talking about here.
Not being vulnerable enough to share that.
Right. I don't even know how you vote or what God you pray to or how we would potentially parent our children or what kind of vacation you want to go on or how you spend versus save money, because I was afraid to talk about it, even though those are major, major touchstones of compatibility or incompatibility, because I was afraid of the outcome.
Right. Or maybe you're afraid that I think differently. What if I feel differently? And wait, you don't think the same way as I do? That can't be.
I didn't see that coming, right? Yeah, but if I'm afraid at that level, then there is little, if any, chance I'm going to be ever able to be vulnerable at the level of simply opening up and expressing hangry frustration with you on the daily. Now, listen, one thing that probably should be said here is if you're constantly angry and fighting and nitpicking, even though that's sort of a running joke between a quote-unquote old married couple in some sitcoms, etc., that's not functional. You shouldn't be constantly at each other's throats. This should be a situation reserved for when, okay, I really am at my wit's end. I've had just about enough here, and it's your turn to listen to me vent. Next time, it'll be mine. But it's not all the time.
No, it's once in a while. It's once in a while. It's like I like to say, once in a blue moon. It doesn't happen often.
And never accompanied by genuine insults or desire to hurt each other, injure each other. It's a safe place for us to be our most authentic self, even at our worst.
Human
Indeed. Hey, men, women, anybody listening to the sounds of our voice, if you expect to get into a relationship with Mr. or Ms. Perfect, my first question is, why would you want someone perfect? How do you live up to them?
My favorite thing you like to say is perfectly imperfect.
Yes, right. You want someone perfectly imperfect like you, right? Because then when you're real and vulnerable with each other, you don't have to load on all that pressure on yourself to be as perfect as they are. I was just talking about this on one of my snippets from the summit. I remember I was on my absolute best behavior for like the first 2 weeks I met you, and then I screwed up. I lost my temper, forgot something, and I was thinking, oh man, now Emily's seen my true colors, she's going to leave. And you went, no. Now I feel like the pressure's off. I could actually be Miss Imperfect, and now we can just get on with the business of being human together. And I was like, wow, what a relief.
Right.
Indeed.
Two perfectly imperfect human beings together. We can make mistakes and forgive one another.
How profound in its utter simplicity is that?
Yeah.
Right? Well, this has been a wide-ranging show, but a fun one, and indeed turned into a topic we've never really covered, but an important one. And hopefully we've touched the lives of someone out there.
Oh, yes.
Well, you seem pretty confident.
I hope we've touched somebody. I'd like to think that we are touching people and making a difference in life so that when we are in our very old age and about ready to leave Earth, we have made a difference for everybody around us.
In very appropriate ways of touching each other.
Of course.
And if you would like to reach out and touch us in appropriate ways, right? I don't know. Maybe we might like being touched in inappropriate ways. We're chill like that. Go ahead and reach out to us by emailing us at scottandemily@scottandemily.com. I'm a weirdo. My name's spelled with one T, so it's SCOTEMILY at scottandemily.com. If you are listening to this show from the Mountaintop Podcast feed, please go to mountaintoppodcast.com, gentlemen, and get on my calendar to get 25 minutes with me for free. If you are of the female persuasion and listening to this show from the X and Y on the Fly feed, the website where you can do the same is scottandemily.com/podcast.
Until next time.
Yeah, right. Until next time. First of all, we appreciate each and every one of you who support the show and leave a review, whether that's on Mountaintop Podcast or X and Y on the Fly. Right, Emily?
That's right. And
indeed, until next time, my name is Scott McKay.
And I'm Emily McKay.
Be good out there.
And have fun.
The Mountaintop Podcast is produced by X and Y Communications. All rights reserved worldwide. Be sure to visit www.mountaintoppodcast.com for show notes. And while you're there, sign up for the free X and Y Communications newsletter for men. This is Ed Roy Odom speaking for the Mountaintop Podcast.